chat about all things hobby related with our friend Ana Polanšćak. I didn't pronounce that right. But nice to have you here, Ana.
Nice to be here, guys.
Yeah, great to have you here. I feel we've been wanting to get you on for a little while, but scheduling stuff's always difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of things going on.
Yeah, and then with COVID and all that, I feel that changed everyone's sort of perspective and upended some things.
Absolutely.
It sure did.
It's crazy time.
And you turned your hobby passion into a business. I mean, I know it was something that you had been working towards before the pandemic, but it finally got off the ground once the pandemic was.
Yeah, the pandemic actually slowed it down like a few months because there was complete chaos, and so I wasn't even sure it was gonna happen, but we're here. It's all good.
Yeah, well, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
It has to be good that it's finally, progressing and you can feel like you're making that progress and it's actually a reality.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, and then also you can, now that this Kickstarter is happening with Dave Taylor, it can also, in that sense, be promoting your business and your work and whatnot. And I feel that makes it easier.
More people are gonna hear about me now. Yeah, that's a good side effect of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good. Morning, Dave. Nice to have you here in the chat.
Oh, hey,
Hello.
Dave.
It's pretty early for you, Dave, being in California.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what, 6 in the
Yeah.
morning for you? That's pretty early. Thanks for getting up to be here. So the Kickstarter, as of when I last checked, it was at like $31,000. So that's pretty good in less than a day of it being live. So
I'm very happy with it. I'm sure everyone else is.
So people are excited. I expected that people would be excited, but I guess now that Kickstarter is so prevalent, there are so many different projects up on Kickstarter that it might be hard to justify backing everything that you might be interested in.
Yeah. Like I had a look at how many things are running like at the same time as this, and there's a lot of stuff going on. There's another book about scenery or something that's
okay.
happening.
Yeah. When I feel you can really go down a rabbit hole of it's like, oh, look at all these board games I should back all these. Like, I will never play any of them, but I'm gonna get them.
Yeah, board games. I feel that they kind of toned it down because a few years back there was a lot of board games on Kickstarter. I kind of think they reduced that.
Yeah, I think they might have.
People had bad experiences with some of them, and they're not as excited about it as
yeah, that's true.
I think in general, now that Kickstarter's been around for a while, people have had bad experiences with it, and I think a lot of people, if they're going to do a Kickstarter, they realize the project needs to be somewhat far advanced if they hope to be successful, because people want to see that, all right, this is probably actually going to be a thing that is made other than just a cool idea.
Yeah, I'm also very cautious when it comes to Kickstarters that have a lot of stretch goals, a lot of free stuff that gets added on, even if it's not free stuff, but a lot of new miniatures, all that stuff. It's kind of clear that they're not gonna be able to produce all that, especially not if at all. So
unless
it's cool mini or not.
Well,
and doing its 14th Zombicide game. But yeah, like I feel you need to be able to see that it's actually on the way, or like that they've done previous Kickstarters. So I feel with Dave, it's helpful that a lot of people who have backed this have probably also backed for some of his previous works, and they've seen like the whole process and it works, those sorts of things. And I think that's important to know that there's been a successful track record here, even with stuff like shipping and like little things like that, and like stretch goals, like you said, that they will come into fruition. So that's good.
Yeah. And he even has actual experience of delivering during the 2020. So I think
that is
he learned
true.
a lot about how to get things done in these conditions.
Yeah, that's true. Because I think his second Kickstarter, like the terrain book, was shipping throughout the chaos that was 2020.
Well, I think the whole thing's a great initiative. I think there needs to be more work sort of celebrating like the art and process of different artists. And there's very little of that, I feel, at least in terms of like miniature painting and artwork and stuff. So
yeah, I agree that's why this series is interesting, and I hope it takes off and that we get many more volumes.
And then since their numbered volumes, anybody who kind of wants to have a collection will kind of be shackled to the notion that they probably have to get them all if they're going to look good on a shelf.
Well, yeah, I guess.
I mean,
if that's what's important to you.
Yeah.
It's not particularly important to me, but I know well, I guess Kickstarters in general have a way to get people caught up in the sort of excitement, like, oh, I don't want to miss out on this, even if it's something that maybe you wouldn't have even gone in, or at least not to the same extent other times.
These books are not Kickstarter exclusive. They're gonna be available for years to come. So if you don't want to buy one now, you can always do it in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, all of Dave's books, like they're around, and depending on the hobby shop, like I know at least there's one shop near me that actually carries them as well, so that's nice.
Yeah.
And I think for these it'll also be interesting, like I think just about anyone, depending on, even no matter what your skill level is, you'll probably be able to find something that you didn't know you wanted to learn more about, really.
Yeah, totally.
And I think with the collection of artists that's being profiled in these first 3 books, like it does a good job of hitting some of the different types of hobbyists that people might be. So it's not all just a similar thing. Like the first one is more about a focus on spectacularly detailed painting, whereas the other 2, yours included, are more about building atmosphere and stuff.
Yeah, and that was a clever move, because people are gonna come and see new things. Maybe they're not gonna pick up the book, but at least they'll become aware of, like, oh, maybe I could look into this, because it's definitely useful to expose yourself to different ideas.
Nah, yeah, that is true. And like I feel Christoph Kiel, who is in one of the books, like, and we actually interviewed him on this same podcast like a little bit before COVID started, but I think he was a great choice due to his huge output of conversions and stuff. But it was also a good way to get Space Marines into these books, but not the cookie cutter Space Marines that, you know, most people are maybe familiar with just due to Games Workshop, and that's primarily what they release.
Good point.
It was also talking with him that I learned that I really needed to buy like a nice razor saw. and that's helped a lot. I mean, I've had other hobby saws and stuff, but the blades are a lot larger and more cumbersome. So I think in general, like all of these, the books will like talk about some of those tools and processes and stuff, and I think if you're actually there and reading them, I think that'll help a lot of people.
Yeah. I don't own a hobby saw, so maybe I should look into that.
I was shocked with how nice it is to have. Like, it's a lot easier to not completely destroy the components you're trying to cut apart. But yeah, they're nice.
Yeah, I was impressed too. Like, I mean, Tamiya makes one that's not too bad, provided you get like the photo etch blades. But the one he uses, I feel, is maybe a better made tool. But
I mean, you can always find new tools and stuff that you could use, and I feel as like the common thing, like use the right tool for the job, like that is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I bought a Dremel, it completely changed the way I convert things. I could do so much new stuff, and it was amazing. If someone who's listening doesn't own a Dremel and likes converting, do get one.
nah, yeah, it's that is a good point. Hey, Phil Build Stuff is listening. Nice to have you here. He's actually a part of another podcast, like the Cutting Mat podcast, that deals with the gunpla hobby as well as kind of the miniature hobby as well. But yeah, nice to have you here.
Hi, Phil.
Well, yeah, so that's another thing that we more recently got back into doing stuff with, like gunpla and stuff like that, and I think it's important to diversify yourself, I feel, because all of these different like hobbies and stuff, they have kind of a different set of like tools and like potential skill sets and stuff that are pretty readily applicable across the board to like lots of things you're doing, and I think that's good.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I've found like it after like 20 some years of just, primarily focusing on Games Workshop models, it was pretty fun and different to go back and build like a Gundam kit and just like marvel at how different Games Workshop and Bandai's sort of philosophy is for making models. Because Bandai is in so much effort and continually pushing their technology for making better molds such that they can hide the mold lines and hide seam lines as you nest like parts together and things, such that like just assembling it without glue or anything will make a relatively good professional looking thing. Whereas like Games Workshop, like if you don't remove the mold lines and paint them, like they're not going to look great.
I think Games Workshop is like doing better.
Oh, they have come a long way in that department too.
Mm-hmm.
Like compared to like when we started, even just comparing like a sprue from, like the boxed game from 3rd edition 40K, how they're all spaced out and bad, to like the things now, how they're all like super crammed together and such. Like it has changed substantially.
Yeah, and the way they cut them is different, so they can get some much more natural poses than they used to, which has its downsides as well. Some people who are not as good at converting, it's harder for them to just swap parts from one model to another.
They have to get used to just cutting it all apart. Break out the Dremel, break out the saw.
Yeah.
I feel it's interesting because I mean probably at the start more at the start of my hobby, I would have been like the same, like, oh man, multi-part all the way, like you have so much freedom, and that now, it's reduced a bit. But really looking back at a lot of those older multi-part kits, like a lot of them, well, sure, you have more flexibility to assemble them. There isn't really that much flexibility to assemble one that has like a natural pose that looks good. But like you
Nope.
sure can go wild and have their arms up in the air, this and that maybe seems good for in the second, but ultimately maybe not.
They tend to look very robotic and awkward.
So I feel, for particular as a company that's generally trying to get it such that you can get what's on the box relatively easily, the way they have it now makes sense, such that even if you're not super skilled and it's new to you, you can cut these out and assemble them and make it look like the artist sort of intended, or the sculptor intended, which is probably good for their brand. And if you're like ourselves or yourself who want to do your own thing, like that's not being like the old school multi-part isn't really going to stop us from cutting the hell out of some of these miniatures.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, fun to keep exploring stuff, because in the same sense, like I've started to look at scale modeling, from like kind of historical scale modeling, tanks and things like that, and how that's sort of a different hobby as well. And it's been kind of developing like weathering techniques and airbrushing skills and stuff for a lot longer than has really been applicable to the Games Workshop side of things. But people are more and more starting to integrate that. So all that stuff's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think Adam has some of your homage to Blasphemous up on the screen. Like, that certainly made me smile to see that stuff in kind of your style of miniatures. It fits very much.
Yeah, I love that game. It can be a bit frustrating at times, but the aesthetics are awesome. The world building is amazing, and I just had to make some miniatures about it, and this was the chance to just like this the penitent one, the character you play in the game. It's a really cool design.
I must admit, like when I first saw some of like the designs and stuff for that game, I thought of your work, and just like a lot of kind of the art style and design of it, like makes me think of like kind of the stuff you created. And it's like, I feel that, or like when I see it, I think like, wow, I wonder if they were inspired off of your creations.
That's probably why I like them so much. I think both I and the creators of Blasphemous are inspired partly by the same things. Spain is a Catholic country, just like Croatia, and a lot of the stuff in this game is inspired by Catholic folklore and saint legends and stuff like that. I pull inspiration from the same sources.
So perhaps we could start the podcast aspect of this.
I think we could,
before we kind of hit on some of the questions that we intend to ask before we hit on them.
I mean,
the same stuff again.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready too.
All right. I'm gonna play the intro music, even though it maybe doesn't present itself that well, but it will allow us to compose ourselves.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Starting it. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dragged into Turbolasers, a Between the Bolter and Me podcast. This is episode 84, and I'm your host, Eric Wire, and I'm here today with my brothers, Adam Wire.
Hey, everybody.
Greg Wire.
Hey, everyone.
And I'm thrilled to say we have our friend Ana Polanšćak here with us, she's actually a professional miniature painter from Croatia, who's behind the blog as well as now the professional painting studio Gardens of Hecate, and is also currently doing a Kickstarter with Dave Taylor to create a book showcasing her work. But again, we're happy to have you here. How are you doing, Ana?
Hi guys, I'm doing great. Lovely day.
Yeah, no, agreed. And yeah, we're really happy to have you on here. I feel we've been kind of talking about it or thinking about it for a little while. Then COVID and all that stuff turned everyone's worlds upside down, and I know it kind of made it more difficult to start your painting studio and stuff, but it's great to finally be doing this.
Yeah, it's great to be here finally.
Yeah. But I guess, we've been following your work for a number of years now, just kind of admiring your imaginative and macabre styling of miniatures and such. And I guess, fortunately, also got the opportunity to meet you back in 2019 for the Alexander Winberg's Mordheim 19 event. And finally got to see some of your grim-looking models in person. But that was a great experience. And ultimately, I'm happy it happened before 2020, because then who knows?
It was really great. I loved that event. I had a great time, and I met a bunch of awesome people that I knew from the internet. And then finally, I had the chance to meet them in person, including you guys.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I feel that's kind of a strength and a cool element of just the hobby community in general, the ability to connect with people and then eventually sort of connect and actually meet up at some time, whether it's a convention or other things. But I guess maybe just to get right into some questions and such. You're from Croatia, which is a relatively small European country, honestly, smaller than even Pennsylvania, where we had grown up in. Based on that, what's the miniature wargaming community like there, and how did you even get into the hobby as a whole?
Croatia is small. There's about 4 million people living in the whole country, and in the capital where I live, it's about 1 million people. And this is a niche hobby, and so of course there's not many people doing this.
Mm-hmm.
There is a community. There actually are many communities. I'm a part of an association, like a club, a local club that gathers people who do wargaming and painting. And there are other such clubs. There's a local gaming store, and there's a lot of people playing at home with their friends.
Mm-hmm.
I got into the hobby when I was about 11 or 12, and I saw actually a flyer from that local gaming store where I saw the Warhammer Fantasy Chaos Knights, and I thought they were amazing, just the greatest thing. And this whole hobby, you can have an army of little toy soldiers that you can paint yourself. Wow.
Yeah, and, yeah.
I told my parents, Mom, Dad, I want this. I want Chaos Knights. So they bought me Marauders, which was good call on their part, because Chaos Knights were metal, and I would have had a hard time modeling
I love those old Chaos Knights, though.
Yeah, I still love them. Someday I should probably get some and paint them with my skills today. That would be cool.
These are the old, the Brian Nelson ones?
No, these were during 6th edition.
Oh, okay.
They were metal. Yeah, horses were plastic, and the guys on top were metal. And there was the champion had a bald head with horns, and he had a sword in the air.
Oh yeah, and I feel one of Games Workshop's, I think their first multi-part kit was some Chaos Warriors that eventually they made kind of the knights in some of that style.
Yeah, but it's not those. It's the ones that came after.
Okay. Well, those are better looking models.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how I got started. And first, I just painted miniatures at home. I read the rule book. Didn't really bother with playing. I just collected, and then after a while, I got a bit older, and I decided to join the club. The club's name is UMS Agram here in Zagreb. So hello to everyone from Agram who's listening. And yeah, later I started my blog, much later.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for a while, and now I'm a freelance painter and sculptor of miniatures.
Yeah, that's incredible, and it's kind of neat to hear just the general progression of things and how like a hobby could actually turn into a career, and how you can take it to all these interesting places. But yeah, because you mentioned your blog, and like you started your Gardens of Hecate, I think in the latter part of 2012, which ultimately was only, I think, a few months before we started our blog between the Bolter and me. But unlike our blog, which kind of stumbled around doing, I don't know, uninteresting reviews and unboxings and stuff, trying to actually find a unique voice, I think you came out like immediately very focused and seemingly fully formed. Like, even I think your second post dealt with some like blood fiends with the countess and things like that I feel you've continually evolved and worked with over the years. How did sort of this come about, and like you stay so focused and throughout kind of your whole tenure throughout the hobby?
The blog was originally started to be about this particular warband, like the Countess and her spirit minions.
Mm-hmm.
And they had this aesthetic that they did. You could see them. They're very grim and macabre, and lots of skulls and ghosts, and red and white, and yeah,
all the best things.
Yeah, and I designed the blog to look, the way to match them, so it all looks like, it all goes well together. And later I expanded my scope on different projects. I added stuff like the world of those ghosts and the countess. It evolved, and later I moved on to other worlds. But in general, I kept this core aesthetic and atmosphere as it was in the beginning. This wasn't difficult to me because that's what I like. I like to keep things consistent, and this aesthetic really appeals to me. And the atmosphere and mood, those are the things that are the most important things to me in miniatures and wargaming, and in art in general, actually.
Yeah, no, and I think that is very easily seen if you look through kind of your work on the blog or on your website, Instagram, things like that you do have a very distinct style, and you try to be consistent with that, which I think is neat, and it makes your work very, very distinctive, which is awesome as well. I guess I'd be maybe a little interested to hear more about like how you kind of got excited about some of this mythology and that sort of thing. I know you have like a background like in English and cultural anthropology. Is that correct? And has that influenced kind of some of your creations here and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's degree in English and cultural anthropology. I was working on earning a master's degree, but that didn't pan out. Through my studies of that, I got exposed to stuff like literature, folklore, different cultures, religions, different approaches to studying those cultures and religions and thinking about them. I learned how culture works, pretty much, how contradictory people can be, and also I got thoroughly disillusioned with a lot of stuff in my time there, including academia as such.
Oh
So,
God, I hear that.
But my interest in these topics came before I actually went to study that. I went to study cultural anthropology because I was interested in folklore. And that interest came like very early in my life, I guess. Like when I look at my old drawings from when I was a kid, I can see that I was dealing with the same topics kind of that I am now. Like there's
okay, that's awesome.
and skeletons, and they're not the bad guys. They have their perspective. It's very interesting. Like I made myself laugh. I found some like a picture book that I drew, like basically a graphic novel when I was 7. And it was amazing. Like I really got the kick out of it. It's
that's great. Well, and I think.
I was going to say one thing that Eric touched upon a little bit, how one of your early posts on the blog was about these blood fiends, which are like spirits of horses that like were fed like human flesh. I found it neat that over the years you have continually revisited that topic and remade those models to, at least thus far, culminate in a Kickstarter that was done for some casts of some of your miniatures, where you have like an updated version of those blood fiends. So like I have found it neat that you have continually tried to come back to things that you did in the past and like update them.
Yeah, I do that a lot. Like it looked great to me at the time, but I've advanced in my skills and ideas over the years, and then I look back to it and I could do this better. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that like this Gardens world with the blood fiends and all that, I kind of stopped working on it because I had other worlds to occupy me. But someday I think I will go back to that world and redesign it, update it to make it better. Because there's some things that I think don't fit too well. But yeah, we'll see what I do with it someday.
Something to look forward to.
And like another model that you've revisited, so Hieronymus Bosch, which I may have butchered his name, he has the one picture that has a little like blue imp playing like a flute, which I know you made an early model like attempting to imitate him using like some Nurgle Plague Bearer models, but then you updated him again for the miniature project, which I always thought was great.
Yeah, I managed to make him pretty much spot on. Like there were limitations because it's a model that needs to be produced in metal, but I liked revisiting that idea. Maybe someday I'll make an even better version when I become a better.
With that, when kind of exploring different cultures and mythologies and such, do you like tend to try to take different ones and incorporate them and change them, or is there particular folklore that you're particularly invested in?
No, I take like elements from different sources and mix and match to get something new. Yeah, that's usually my approach.
Or I mean, I feel
there's a story in folklore, or if there's like just a little bit like when I was doing Legen, and which was an event I did which had knights fighting giants. It was in 2018, I think. Yeah, it was a community event. So anyway, I was making my my knight and his retinue, and I did a series of little stories with miniatures to represent how he found his retinue members along the way to fight the giants. And I incorporated several like bits from different folklore tales. Like he found his elf companion when they fought a basilisk, and I used the legend that the blood of the basilisk can give you the power to understand the language of birds. So they killed the basilisk. They got this power because some of the blood got on them, and then in a later story, they could understand the two ravens who are from an Irish ballad. And they talk to each other about the corpse of a murdered knight that they were gonna eat. So they heard the ravens because they could understand them because of the blood of the basilisk. They found the murdered knight. They took him to a necromancer, and they got another retinue member from the So
That's
yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's great, and I feel other people who are maybe familiar with some of those things can kind of see some of those parallels, or even if not, just people trying to take stuff from their own experiences and trying to relate it. Like, I mean, Legen in general, it always I thought was cool. It sort of reminded me of like Seven Samurai, like Akira Kurosawa's film. That idea of a band of different samurai or whatnot trying to defend the village and such, and it's sort of a story that is portrayed a lot in different communities and lore and such, and it's neat to see it in like this style.
Yeah, someday I would like to turn it into a self-standing game. Like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna do that at some point.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. That would be great. I guess, and another question, like, you have an incredibly sort of distinctive style of converting as well as painting, trying to get these sort of fantastical yet sometimes grotesque designs together, as well as keeping sort of a more true scale proportion to a lot of your models. Can you talk a little bit about this style, maybe how it came to be, and like how you go about converting and creating models?
Sure. Like in the past few years, I started using historical miniatures as base for my humans in my worlds and games. The thing is, when they look so mundane and familiar, then the creatures and monsters and stuff that looks uncanny and unnatural looks even more uncanny and unnatural because of the contrast. So basically, yeah, the little humans that come from history are more believable because they look familiar to us.
Yeah.
Like when I look at like the aesthetics of, let's say, World of Warcraft, I can't imagine any of that stuff, including the environments and whatever, ever existing in a physical world. It's just, yeah, that aesthetic never captivated me. I understand that people like it, but for me, it was never appealing.
Yeah.
I like to keep things grounded and then, pop in something that's completely insane that, and the people in my worlds find it completely insane. Just like we would if we saw it.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a good
I feel
approach.
and it makes things like a little bit more relatable as well. That there are all these sort of standard things, but then if something's a little bit out of place, it's a lot more terrifying and unnerving.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel your use of like Perry miniatures and other historical miniatures, I feel you were one of the first people that I've seen kind of in just the general hobby community that makes a lot of use of those sorts of things. And yeah, I think it helps a lot. And it's certainly kind of something that the three of us like, and it kind of our blog, we spend a lot of time complaining and fussing over trying to get better scale on things.
Well, I feel, Adam, you spend a ton of time like taking Games Workshop's miniatures and trying to make them have better proportions, when perhaps the better idea is to start with models with better proportions like you've done.
I should do more of that. Yeah. It's like I feel now more often than not, it's like I like this model, but I have to trim down their feet to be like half the size and then resculpt their boots, which I guess in some regards is a good exercise in sculpting and stuff, but I do need to look more into the historical miniatures, because, and the same thing is true with like the little weapons and stuff. like the tiny little
Yeah.
swords and warhammers and stuff, instead of just trying to remake all that stuff. Like, lots of people have already sculpted great little warhammers and maces and stuff. And I think that in general, like if they do have more realistically scaled like weapons and stuff, when they do come across some horrifying construct or monster or something, like that also helps to heighten that sense of dread and like all that stuff. So like that's good.
Yeah.
I guess in addition to just like your converting and such, I feel even in your earliest blog posts and stuff, you weren't kind of like afraid to make liberal uses of like green stuff and modeling putty and things like that, which isn't really something that Games Workshop really does a lot to promote. I mean, they certainly sell it, and maybe it's used to be mentioned a little bit in some of the older magazines, but it's not now. Like, what has kind of pushed you to be, unafraid of doing that, or like sculpting and such, and now even sculpting entire models?
Well, it's quite simple. I just had ideas and I wanted to make those things, and there were no bits that existed, or there were bits, but they would cost me too much. So I just said, well, I'm gonna learn how to sculpt. It's not impossible. So many people can sculpt, and so I started learning. It's like that with everything. Some things are easier, others are take a lot of effort, but many are worth it. And when you learn a new skill like that, it gives you power to achieve the vision you have in your head. But what you need to have is motivation coming from inside, from yourself, and dedication to go through with it. So because resources to learn, they're out there. They're like the internet has them. They're easy to find. Okay, some not that easy, but they are out there. There are people you can ask. There are like videos. There are articles, whatever. You just need to be motivated and dedicated. That's it. Like I'm not yet as good as I want to be at sculpting, but and I will never be able to do everything I imagine in my head. But that doesn't discourage me to try.
No, yeah, I feel that's a very good mindset, and being sort of so open to trying new and different things, it just allows you to learn. And I think in general, like this hobby as a whole, it's about painting and doing all these small, finely detailed things. I think a lot of us, if you do just push through kind of the unease and uncertainty about something new, like you'll probably surprise yourself with what you can do, and then every step towards that, I think you make something better and better. And yeah, if you just continue with that motivation, like you said, I think a lot can come of that. And I think certainly anyone following your work can kind of see that and see the progression and how it's grown over the years into like such a cool thing.
That's a good thing about running a blog, because you document your progress over the years, and everyone can see. Maybe it motivates someone to get started, because when you encounter my work now, like you may forget that I didn't start out knowing all this stuff. I had to get here.
Yeah, and it's been over multiple years as well. Like it's not something that just overnight that came into being. Yeah, that is a very good point. I mean, I guess in addition to just your like conversions and sculpting and stuff, you also have a very distinctive painting style that I think sort of emphasizes kind of the grim darkness that people talk about inherent in Games Workshop settings, even though I think most of Games Workshop models from like the heavy metal team and stuff don't really have that grim sort of styling. They don't have what like the John Blanche's sort of bleakness and that sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit about your style and like how you go about that sort of painting process, and maybe any sort of tips to anyone who would want to try to achieve something like that?
Okay. I was always leaning towards this, darkish style in my paint jobs, and this was less successful when I was less skilled because when you do stuff like that, it can always it can look the miniature can look unreadable, like a blob of nothing, like especially from a
Yeah.
tabletop distance. Like, okay, when you take it and look at it, yeah, you kind of see stuff. So like later I learned that I need to properly highlight stuff, that edge highlighting and black lining are both awesome techniques for this style of painting. I think a lot of people who paint in this style forget about that. It really uh, helps the miniature to be readable from a distance.
Yeah, no, I feel that that's true, because like I know some people like who aren't as excited about this sort of niche of the hobby will kind of make fun of this, I'm gonna say, blend shitsu style, that like it's just bad painting, and like if you don't really want to try, just do that. But I feel that is sort of a disservice, and like if you want to do a style like that but have it really read like yours does, Anna, like you do have to use some like classical techniques, or you do have to be very precise in what you're doing and why you're doing
You
it.
have to understand what you're doing and
Yeah.
why. You can't just slap on washes and the
Like
type of
contrast paints.
I
Isn't
haven't
it
tried.
a one contrast, one thick coat, and you're there, right?
Yeah.
Nah, but yeah, in all seriousness, like you're saying, yeah, like you have to be have a reason for what you're doing, and or maybe to say another way, the more you have like a reason why you're doing particular things, like the better it's going to look, and the better you're going to be able to convey the feelings or emotions you want to.
Did I hear you say you haven't actually tried any of the contrast paints?
Yeah, I don't think I have. I don't own any. Maybe I tried them at a convention or something. But
So I remember when they came out, I went and bought a few of them, and to this point, the only time I've ever used them, it's always just as like an additional like glaze or something to get like a small effect here or there. Like that's it. Like I've never really used one to paint a model, because I guess
to my style of painting, I don't think it fits anywhere.
yeah.
Really.
Well, like I've always, even like washes and stuff in general, it's like I'm working on paint and stuff, and then it's like, all right, I'm gonna put a wash over. It's like, well, I've ruined it. And
yeah, on the other hand, I work a lot with washes and glazes, so like contrast paints are kind of like that. So
yeah,
where do I fit them? I don't know. Maybe I should buy one and see.
Well, so kind of towards that end, I painted one of your blood fiends and the little Gaul familiar with the hat. I painted some of those with primarily contrast paints. They were the first time I tried to use them, and they worked out pretty well. I mean, admittedly, I didn't really try to use them in the way GW sort of suggests, like just slap on a thick coat and it's beautiful. But I did use them. But with that said, I think they are a lot like other paints, that if you use them and try to use layers, and after like just putting one on isn't going to result in probably what you want. Like you do need to highlight some things or darken recesses and things. So like I feel like anything, you still need to put in the time if you want to get it to, where you sort of imagine it. So like everything, there isn't just going to be one product that just magically does it for you and removes the skill and time you need to invest.
Yeah.
So, and this is actually mentioned in the chat, but since we're talking a little bit about your painting style and stuff, can you talk a little bit about the speckle sort of effect that you tend to add to a lot of your pieces, and like why you do that and kind of what you think that adds?
Sure. That's an interesting thing. I discovered that when I was doing a study of. So I was making a miniature that was supposed to look like one of John Blanche's sketches. So I wanted to like it was a study basically. So I made a Vostroyan guardsman based on one of his sketches, and then I went to paint him. The way John paints his concept art. So I tried to emulate that, and I saw that he does that. He sprays like dots on his artwork, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's the model I'm talking about. So I did that on my model, and I was like, yeah, that kind of looks awesome. I'm not sure what that is. It's kind of like a particle effect or something, because it kind of feels like it adds atmosphere to a model. I don't know, like he's standing in an environment that has this stuff floating in the air. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I'm very happy that I did that study because I discovered that neat trick, and then I started applying it.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like it adds a lot of like atmosphere and feeling to a lot of the models in like a very major way that I wouldn't have thought of it.
Yeah. How do you tend to apply that? Is it like flicking a brush, or do you?
Yeah. I take a brush with stiff bristles, like for with gouache, technique, and I dip it in slightly diluted paint, and then I pull back the bristles and let them go, and I spray. I'll always try it out on like a piece of paper or something, so you don't fuck up your miniature.
Yeah. It's like after you've largely finished it, the last thing you want to do is.
Yeah, have you had instances where you felt like you kind of fucked that up, or have you practiced it enough that you feel
I managed to rescue it if I fuck it up, because it's slightly diluted paint. So if I put too much, I just dip it in water, and before it dries, and it's fine.
That's good. I mean, but that is kind of a difficulty in some sense with acrylic paints, that they do dry pretty quickly. But I guess maybe even getting back to the sort of courage to try new things and stuff, the more you try that, like oftentimes even mistakes, you can learn something new or be able to apply that and do something interesting to it as you try to fix it or things like that. So yeah, I feel push on, try different things.
Yeah, experimentation is great for progressing your artistic skill.
When I feel like just the notion of like spending some time to study some of the artwork that you really enjoy and try to derive some of the interesting aspects of it, that in this case led to you discovering something that adds an interesting dimension to all of your painting that you wouldn't have suspected. So like pay attention to the art that you like.
Yeah, and not just look at it, but also try to emulate it, because then you think about it in a different way. It's really much different than just looking at it and thinking about it. It's a bit deeper.
Yeah, when you try to analyze it critically, but then also take that next step, it allows you to appreciate it in a different way.
Yeah, trying to figure out like what medium they used, or like how did they achieve this particular effect.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I guess in addition to just building and painting models, you also play a bunch of games that you've showcased on your blog throughout the years. Like you even I think posted something new yesterday or recently, but like Monstrous Births was something. Legen, you talked briefly about even in this episode. With them, you often experiment with different kind of custom rule settings. I know in the past you've kind of modified the rules to Malifaux to fit this, and then even now you're starting to develop a system, Fabula, I believe. When playing these games and doing this sort of thing, is there like an important thing that you look for in rule sets, and how do you use that to kind of create the atmosphere games you want to play?
Generally, what I like in a rule set is that it's flexible and light, so it doesn't get in the way of telling the story. The rule system should enable you to tell different kinds of stories, or if you have a particular scenario in mind, maybe you find a rule set that's perfect for that kind of scenario. The way we developed our system, Fabula, was it was meant to be the system for our event. Sunhold, the first triumvirate, which was supposed to take place last summer, but because of the pandemic, it was cancelled, and hopefully someday we're gonna have that. Anyway, my brother and I designed the rules that would help the game run smoothly. So we expected 8+ players, so it needed to be very light, so you don't spend too much time thinking about the rules or figuring out what you can do with your model. And also it needed to enable you to do many actions other than just fighting. So exploration, communicating with others, like other models interacting in the models, and the environments interacting in different ways than just bashing and smashing. And then since we developed it, and we said, yeah, we made a rule system, everyone was like, oh, you made a rule system, can we see it? And then we made it public. We made a Facebook group, and then we kind of started developing it so it can be more generally applicable, not just for our event, but in general. And we're still working on it. For the past month and a half, I think we were playtesting rules for campaigns with that system. So that's what my battle report was like recently, with another giant problem. I seem to like
those fucking giants.
Yeah, and so I think at some point we're gonna publish that rule system and do something with it, turn it into a product.
Yeah, no, that sounds great, because I know you mentioned about the ability to have rules to actually do a more broad variety of things other than close combat and shoot. And I can see that
about Malifaux. That's why.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That Malifaux, I was always impressed with the system because it did incorporate different actions and stuff into the rules, and even just into the scenarios and such. It wasn't always just kill all things or get behind enemy lines. There were other more interesting things to kind of push you to have a more narrative theme to your games, which I think is cool. And it's neat to see you over the years kind of build upon that and take things that you like to sort of impart that and help. Because I know certainly for people that maybe came into the hobby initially with 40K and things like that and want to get into this sort of darker styling of things and narrative games, it can be kind of difficult to do that. Or Games Workshop is always sort of spoon-fed me these sorts of things, like how should I do this? And I think having a light rule system that can kind of push you naturally towards doing those things is helpful as people try to get into this themselves and enjoy that sort of creative synthesis of rules and story and models.
So there's a question from the people in the chat here asking about the environments and backdrops that you create to include in most of the pictures of your stories, along with you've done a bunch of little mini installations and your shadow boxes that you've built. What's the process behind that? And I would certainly say with all of your photography, with having all the scenery in the background, it really helps elevate the pictures to go beyond just an image of a cool model. Like, it helps kind of create an evocative story just in and itself.
Yeah, for a lot of my photos, especially recently, I use my actual gaming scenery as the backdrop. So I put the board, I put all the scenery in the back, I make a neat composition, and then I take pictures. I do that for my battle reports. Like when I play a game, I don't want to take pictures while I'm playing a game for various reasons. Like, I don't want to interrupt the game. I don't want to the pics look better if I make a composition. I can do it in piece. I can fix the lighting. I can do everything like that. So yeah, that's my gaming scenery, which I just put together to make a nice composition for a photo. In other pictures, I just put a black backdrop and take a picture of the miniature on it. Or what else? I had like a green backdrop that I kind of stopped using. That I painted just with acrylics on paper. So it's basically a sheet of printer paper smeared with ochre and black and green acrylics. So I'm sure you'll find it in the Instagram feed. What else do I use? Oh, so you mentioned my like boxed saints, right? Those are fully scratch built like busts, basically, inside a wooden box with a glass window. They're a bit bigger. They're not 28 millimeter, of course. They're like, the box is like maybe 3 inches tall, and yeah, I make those and I paint them, and people like them because I sold a bunch of them. Most of them I made were made for people, they were commissions, and I
really
like
cool.
that. I like the format because I can make all kinds of characters into these little mummies. Mostly people come to me and say, "Oh, I want a saint based on Saint Bartholomew who was flayed. He was a martyr. Was flayed." So it's awesome. This is gonna look cool. There's a lot of medieval artworks of him. Catholic saints are completely mental. I take a lot of inspiration from their legends.
Also,
very very grimdark.
You had mentioned on your feature on the Grimdark Film Club, you had mentioned the book Heavenly Bodies, which is a look at I guess the catacombs of saints from the Catholic Church and how they'd decorate them up with all sorts of stuff. And a lot of these boxes remind me of stuff that I saw in that. Would you say that's one of the inspirations you've used for it?
Absolutely, that is one of the inspirations. Even some of the saint mummies that I made are directly influenced by the catacomb saints. Their history is actually really interesting. They weren't actually saints. They were just some random bodies that they found in the catacombs, and they said, "Okay, these are now saints because we need Counter-Reformation." And then they sent them to small towns all across Central Europe to revive the Catholicism, basically, because it was in danger because of the Protestantism started rising. And so they told people, yeah, this is an early martyr from days of Rome. And yeah, they gave them names, they dressed them up, and they put them on display to inspire the people. And yeah,
what an inspiration!
It's really fascinating stuff.
They're still inspiring people now, but probably in a different sense.
Yeah, they're inspiring me.
Yeah,
that's cool.
What sort of things do you use to sculpt them? Like,
No, it's mixed media. I use like milliput green stuff and air drying clay and little jewelry elements and tiny little like gems and stuff that's usually used like it's meant to be used for decorating fingernails.
Mhm.
That's like if you need gems for your loot piles for miniatures, you have a look at nail art supplies.
It's a good
There's
idea.
up there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, all that stuff's cool, and like as was touched on a little bit earlier, like all your backdrops and just in general, spending some time to focus on creating terrain and such for your models to be over, I think is a good experience, because it's a slightly different challenge than models, but also it just allows you to have better and nicer things for the games you eventually play. And I feel, unfortunately, we don't do enough of that, and it makes it harder to want to even play games as well if you just have a sea of GW plastic buildings.
Yeah.
that aren't painted.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's-
but that's cool.
terrain is absolutely very important if you want to have an immersive experience gaming.
Mhm.
Paint your plastic Games Workshop buildings. Do it.
Yeah.
Well, the Warcry, from the first Warcry game, a lot of those like ruins and buildings, like I feel they can slot in like many different things. Like they're not so distinctly like Games Workshop stuff that like I feel if you paint them in the right kind of grim, like desaturated look, they'd fit for a lot of things.
Yeah. As soon as they previewed them, I was like, yes, I'm getting that.
I'm on
Yeah.
board.
I have like maybe 3 or 4 sets. I have a whole table full of that. I kind of converted it and made like modifications so it's not all the same. But yeah, when I first saw it, it really reminded me of like dungeons in Diablo 2.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love Diablo 2, and this stuff, like it's awesome scenery. I'm not sorry that I bought so much.
You mentioned Diablo 2. How did you feel about Diablo 3? Because I feel it was a fun game, similar mechanics, but I felt the imagery verged more towards like World of Warcraft fantastical stuff and away from the grimness of Diablo 2, such that I did not like it as much.
Yeah, we agree on that. But still, there's a bunch of interesting scenery inspiration inside Diablo 3. I would go and roam around different environments in Diablo 3 and look, this detail looks interesting. I would just screenshot it. Like there's a bunch of urns in the cemeteries in the game. So yeah, that's kind of cool. So I actually implemented that in my own scenery.
That's good.
Cemetery. I made them from beads, like wooden beads and some little metal rings. So
That's a good idea too. Yeah.
Materials everywhere.
Well, I kind of felt Diablo 3, they tried to put more of a story into the game than the other games went into.
Yeah, but it didn't work. It didn't work.
They didn't need that.
Rubbish.
They did.
Yeah, it was so bad. Like they didn't stick to their strengths and using like more of the evocative storytelling that kind of emerges from the game and tried to.
Yeah, your journey was the story.
But well,
particularly in the original game, because you were just going lower and lower into the earth.
Well, thinking about Diablo, it has kind of very evocative and cool music associated with it. How does music and like stuff like dungeon synth and things like that. Is that something that's important to you in your creative process? And like, does that influence you at all?
Yeah, I really like to use music as background when I game. It also adds to the atmosphere of what's happening. I also listen to it while I'm making my miniatures. But yeah, the music is very important to me. Especially I like you said, dungeon synth and ambient music, video game and movie soundtracks. Stuff like that. It really fits. I would actually like to collaborate with a dungeon synth or ambient artist to create some music for my world at some point. That would be cool. So maybe somewhere down the line, I'm gonna try to find someone to work with, and that would be cool.
Well,
Yeah,
so
that's a
some
great
of our
idea.
listeners might not be familiar with what dungeon synth as a genre is. Could you give a description or your description of it, Anna?
Sure. It's like kind of recently developed genre that came from what I found interesting. It came from black metal. I'm not a fan of black metal. I can't stand black metal. It's very grating. But dungeon synth is electronic music that is usually very melodic, and it's heavy on the atmosphere, like dark atmosphere that takes you to old school RPGs and castles, ruins, all that stuff I like. So it sounds the way I make miniatures, basically.
Yeah, so from my understanding of it, as you said, it kind of originated from like the black metal scene, where one of the early artists of it, he goes by Mortis, from Norway. He was for a short time in the black metal band Emperor, but was eventually kicked out because he wasn't good enough as a musician. I think he was a bassist or something. But then he, on his own time, was starting to experiment with keyboards and make like atmospheric soundtrack sort of stuff, which then that launched his career, and he's still doing it. But black metal in itself can be pretty grating. But I mean, to each their own. I in the end kind of like that myself too, but also like
Absolutely.
the stuff too.
Yeah, okay. I guess so. You've participated in a bunch of sort of collaborative events over the years, like Tor Megiddo, Mordheim 2019, which, as we mentioned, we actually were able to meet you there, but also have done some of your own, like Legen and Sunhold is going to happen at some point, hopefully. What's like your draw and attachment to these sorts of style events, and do you think there's something that it adds to just the hobby and community as a whole?
I think those events are really a wonderful experience. Like I said before, it's great to meet people in person, people you hang out with online, and who have you share interests and the hobby, and it's great to meet up and play a game or just talk. Like people who do competitive gaming, they go to tournaments where they hang out with their friends. People who are painters go to painting shows, and these kind of events are that, but for me. And what's also cool about them is you get to collaborate and build a world together. I usually like to work alone. Like I have very strong vision, and I like to create on my own, but sometimes it's really cool to work with others and to work together to make something. It's special.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that, and was, I guess, just for us starting a blog and such, and realizing like over time that there are other people who have similar interests, and that you can kind of get together and work and inspire one another for the things you're doing, I think is fun, and having like some sort of set date to do something also pushes everybody to try something different and explore a new facet of like a hobby they already enjoy. So like, yeah, I feel they're great, and something that I would encourage anyone to try to start some event and get people involved and whatnot. It doesn't have to be a huge like global thing or whatever, but just trying.
Especially now, the whole 28 community has grown much larger than when it was when I joined. So there's a lot of people you can bring on board. Yeah.
No, it has grown tremendously, and I mean, I think it is in part due to like your blog and your work, and I guess the 28 magazine, which you were a part of, sort of its foundation. And yes, I feel it's easier than ever to explore some of these things, and worth it if you're at all interested.
Yeah, the magazine was, I think, a great move, and like you said, it made it easier for people to understand what the fuck this even is.
Yeah,
and how to get involved. And the mag is organizing challenges and community stuff, which also helps people to get involved.
Yeah, no, so I certainly agree with that. And I feel for a long time, just in general, you've sort of been kind of a hobby ambassador, sharing kind of your creations, your thought process, some tutorials and such. Like how, like for the Mordheim event we mentioned, you created a warband for Greg to use. Like that, this sort of generosity I feel is constantly being shown throughout like your work and such. How important is that sort of interaction with the community? I know it can be sort of a solitary hobby at times, but I think that connection is helpful.
Yeah, I like that I can interact with people who enjoy the same stuff I do and who enjoy my work. I'm not gonna pretend that all the praise I'm getting is not pleasant.
Yeah.
When I blog, I it's not entirely altruistic that I just share it for the people. It's also a reminder for me, like a few years down the line, I can go back and see what I was doing at this time, how I was doing it. It's notes, not just for everyone reading, but for me, like for future Ana. Yeah. So I like engaging with the community and through blogging. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's fun.
Various reasons.
Yeah, I feel I kind of have a similar thought for our blog as well. It's like it's nice to share things. It encourages you to keep going on with things and just to interact with people, as well as just to be able to almost like have a journal of how things have progressed and what you're doing. But I guess after many years of just having your blog here, you did, as we suggested, transition into like a professional painting studio. Recently, I guess it started even last year throughout the pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired that and like how that's going?
Sure. This kind of stuff is what I'm good at. I have a particular set of skills, and I just finished my story with the university, and I didn't have a job. So starting this was a way to have a job, and now I have a job.
Yeah.
So
Hell yeah.
Thank you to everyone who buys my stuff, because you're feeding me basically. It's awesome that I get to do what I love and make an honest living from it. It's the dream, and I'm lucky, that this is a reality for me. At least for now, I'm doing okay. I'm never gonna be rich doing this, but it's fine. Like I'm pretty happy.
Also,
excellent.
if people are interested in trying to like commission you to do something, should they just go to your website and like you have like contact information on there, and I guess there's
there's a form where and you can just drop me an email. Like on the bottom of the page, there's contact information and all that. You just send you just ask about it basically.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me what your idea is, and we can discuss it, and I can tell you how much it's gonna cost. That's basically it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a fixed price list because I make very highly customized stuff, and each project is unique, and each project is for the person who commissioned it.
Yeah, I feel that's kind of a unique element of your work. Like certainly it's sort of suggested that you're like a professional painting studio, but I feel it goes beyond that. It's not just like, oh, paint those Stormcast Eternals for me. Like there's more there, and I think that's what kind of allows you to stand out and be special amongst, like, is there lots of painting studios that are more focused on like, do you need an army to play at that next tournament? Like warrior studio, and like that's not not you.
Not my kind of that's not my approach.
Yeah, well, I think having your blog as well, like you essentially had like years to kind of like promote and kind of show your unique style and stuff to people, and so like that I think is great.
People showed interest in my work. Like people bought the miniatures I sculpted and the card deck that I designed.
I love that card deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, someday I should probably have it available again. The company that I used stopped shipping to my country and said they would never do it again. So I said, okay.
Yeah, because I have one of those sort of Malifaux-like card decks that I just have with my things. So whenever I take a case of models around, it's there for if I need it. I guess like just sort of building on this, like certainly people have taken notice of like your creations and your work, and just like the Kickstarter that's going on now with you and Dave Taylor creating a book kind of showcasing some of your work and creative process is a testament to that. Can you talk a little bit about that project? And
sure, it's the book is really an amazing experience for me, and it was a long time aspiration of mine to do something like that, to make a book. So yeah, many thanks to Dave Taylor for making that happen for me, and to all the backers who funded the project. I think it's doing really well. It's on Kickstarter right now. What people can expect from my book and from the other books in the series is a bunch of photos of mine and the other artists' models, and our thoughts on how and why we do things with miniatures. Like for me in particular, it's going to focus on the world building, because that's basically what I do. I use like things from miniature modeling and painting, scenery building, photography, graphic design, making like all kinds of gaming accessories and stuff like that. I use all of that to bring my imaginary weird ass worlds into physical reality. Also gaming, yeah. So that's what my book is gonna cover. The other two books are by Christoph Kiel. He's a really awesome kit basher. Like his book is also gonna involve a lot about converting miniatures, but he has a different approach. He like uses almost no green stuff for his stuff. Like he's like kit basher. And the volume 1 is by Miniature Monthly, which is a collective of 3 artists who also teach painting, and they have a very high skills in the techniques of miniature painting. So it's a collection of 3 different books, each showing an approach to the miniatures hobby from a totally different perspective.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really cool a cool thing to see. And like Dave, he's had at least 2 previous Kickstarters making various books about the hobby. So I feel this seems like a natural next step, but it's neat that he's moving out to showcase other people's work and how kind of it fits in with the hobby. And just like these 3 books currently they do a good job of kind of showcasing the diversity of interests in the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think that's exciting, and it's neat to see not even a day into the campaign and it's already far surpassed, the fundraising goals. So like it's exciting to see that it has already been successful, and I think only more so. And just I'm excited that you're one of the first books in the hopefully continuing series, because I feel you're, of all like the people that I follow in the hobby, I feel you're one of the major ones that I would like to see an even deeper dive into kind of that creative process.
Thank you, and I'm really excited too. It's amazing, truly.
Well, and hopefully with the success of this, they'll continue with some more books. Like maybe Weirding Way can have one.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Sure, why not?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the series is meant to continue. That's the plan, as far as I know. These are just the first 3 volumes, and I hope we get to see many other artists and get a chance to learn from them.
yeah,
and their process.
Explore like the different like diversity and inspirations and processes that everyone has, because everyone kind of comes at it differently.
There are many different ways to go about the hobby.
I guess with that, we're like kind of just move past the hour point. Like maybe this is a good place to wrap this up. But I guess with that, do you have any shout outs you'd like to do, last words, things like that?
Last words.
Last words for this particular session of talking. Hopefully we can have you on at another time point.
Thanks for having me here. It was fun.
Yeah, it's been really fun talking with you kind of about your approach to the hobby and things, and also this Kickstarter, which hopefully is even more successful than it's already looking to be now. But yeah, with that, thanks everybody. Thanks again, particularly to you, Ana, for being here. And I guess, we hope to talk with you again soon. And thanks for listening, everybody. All right. The podcast portion's recorded. Thanks, everybody.
Cool.
We did it.
Yeah, actually, so Ana, I'm trying to determine which Chaos Knights are the ones that you were talking about.
Okay, let me find them for you.
Yeah, because are they?
Because I remember, like, I particularly loved the ones Brian Nelson made. They were really kind of like plain and stoic.
I posted a bad image of it in Discord, which maybe Adam can bring up somehow.
Oh yeah, that's the ones.
Okay, yeah, because they have always been my favorite, I think.
Yeah, mine too. Oh, the ones that came after, like, what? They're
fucking garbage.
Such a missed opportunity. It was insane. The ones that they made another version after that, like in the Chaos Start Collecting box or something, that wasn't released in general, right?
Yeah, they're better.
Yeah, they're better, but
they're still not.
I just wish they took these and updated them to be better sculpts, and that would be awesome. Like maybe I'll fucking do it.
Yeah. I love these particular models because the plastic Chaos Warriors, like they are kind of in this style, but I feel even these are a little bit better. They're a little bit more, I don't know, subdued, and down to earth. Like they don't have gigantic swords or like lances that are turning into demons that are like the size of a battering ram or something. There's something about them that's just so imposing and like doom approaching.
Yeah. I guess that's why they made such an impression on me that I wanted to start the whole hobby.
Like one of them, their little shields has some hands like nailed to it, and like they're so good.
Yeah, I love them. I think we have some of them here that somewhere that I feel have just been sitting in a case waiting for something.
I think I have some. I think my brother bought them at some point, and then he painted them, or I did them for one of my old Warhammer armies that never got finished. I probably have some somewhere in different states of horrible paint jobs.
I hear that. I think ours are primed and trimmed and whatnot, but no paint was ever really put on them. Their helmets are also really cool. They're really simple, but like they have a very ominous vibe to them.
Yeah, and the color scheme they used, like this undivided chaos here, looks really cool. Very metal.
I feel something too about it, like the fact that their helmets are, like you said, very ominous and such, but they look like they could have actually been made.
Yeah.
Or a lot of things like their domed armor and their weapons and such look like a blacksmith actually. I mean, it would have probably still been challenging, but like they could maybe be made. Whereas like a lot of the other stuff now, it's just like so fantastical and like it removes you from that dreary, dark setting that initially drew me to Warhammer.
Yeah.
In Discord, I posted an image another Chaos Knight set that
these were.
Yeah, these use the same horses, but I don't like those.
Yeah, they are not the best. Which they're
in the style of the really old school Chaos stuff, but they're plastic and I don't know. Like, I'm not a fan.
No,
they're pretty wonky. Pretty wonky.
Oh my gosh!
God damn.
There's something else. They're bad. They're bad.
Yeah, because they look a lot like their first multi-part kit, which was
Plastic Chaos Warriors was I think one of their first, if not their first, like multi-part plastic kit, and they're not great.
Yeah,
they're somewhat charming just due to that nostalgia, but they're not good.
No, they're not.
The old Gorilla Hunch Chaos Warriors. Yeah, that's what it is. Their shields are kind of fun. Some of them, they have the little fun faces and stuff, but
that's about all you can say.
Yeah, their bases are nice. They're square.
Yeah, well. With so I'm sure like a lot of your time now is taken up with, in this case, like writing the book, working on that and doing commissions. Are you still doing like personal projects and such? I mean, I guess your the games and stuff you recently played to kind of develop that system, I guess, are probably personal, but like how difficult is it to sort of separate the business and that sort of thing?
Well, I do have time to do personal stuff, but much less than I used to. Because when you are running a business, you don't work 9 to 5. You work as much as you have to. You don't just make the miniatures people commission from you, you also do your marketing, your PR, your accounting, everything. So I'm very, very busy these days, but that's a good sign, I guess.
Yeah.
My business is still very young, and I have to try hard to have it take off. Maybe somewhere down the line it'll be easier, and I'll have more time to do my own stuff. But yeah, I'm happy with how things are.
Yeah, no, it looks good. It's nice to continue to see a steady stream of things coming from the blog and on Instagram and things like that.
One thing, yeah, I was gonna say, the little models you sculpted for the Smash Bash they're great. I love the little knights and stuff.
Thank you. It was actually my first attempt to sculpt knights, and I think I did a pretty good job. And the piggy is so fun.
They read really well as like knights in armor and stuff, and like, I don't know, I've often thought about the notion of sculpting armor, and I think that it looks like it would be tricky, but like the ones you made here, they read perfectly as like what they're supposed to be. So like, I think that you nailed it.
Thanks. I think there's plenty of room for improvement, but we just take
start somewhere.
I have to keep sculpting, and I'll get better. That's how it works.
You have any of your own sculpts like for sale coming up? Like I know you did that first Kickstarter, and I think there was another Kickstarter in the works. Do you know if that's progressing, or is that?
I'm not sure when the other one is gonna be. Like, none of these Kickstarters is run by me. I get commissioned a bunch of models, like a bunch of sculpts, and then the company or the person goes and sells them. So I've finished them, and now we're waiting for the person responsible to go and do it. It's up to them when they're gonna do it, but it'll be awesome, I'm sure. Yep. Showing them on stream. These are actually all inspired by folklore, by different costumes and creatures.
The little tree things are so great.
Yeah, they're cute critters. So yeah, this time, like on the first Kickstarter that I did for Harwood, I had like a bunch of various designs. For this one, the client wanted to have them all be a part of a set, so they all like thematically fit together.
Okay.
And I've explored these these kind of creatures in conversions before, like the one with the antler shield and skull mask and all that. It's very similar to the Dark Soul model I did for Mordheim 2019. Except this one is fully sculpted by me. So they both came. They were both inspired by the same image, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Your Mordheim 2019 band was something to behold, both in visually and on the tabletop. I know the kind of tore through the witch hunters Greg was playing with.
Yeah, they did really well, because we didn't start from the beginning. The possessed, which I played, are apparently when they advance through the campaign, they get very strong, and we started already advanced. So I think that's why I had the advantage. Just bashed everything.
Yeah, they were good. They were awfully good. I guess maybe with that, maybe we want to think about wrapping this stream up relatively soon. Like, we don't want to, I'm sure you have
busy person have things that you could be doing.
Yeah, I have Necron vehicles to convert and Cursed City to paint.
Oh damn, that sounds fun.
Yeah, it'll be a fun Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions from the chat that we haven't answered?
Yeah, let's look back through those. I think we tried to at least partially incorporate a bunch of them throughout, but if we missed any, I'm sorry, everybody.
Yeah. Well, you can always come to my Instagram or Facebook or blog and ask me directly if I didn't answer something here.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Instagram makes things like that a lot easier than maybe they were 15 years ago.
That's very true. Very true.
Well, thanks a lot for being here, Anna, and thanks everybody for joining in.
Yeah, it was great.
Been fun.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, everyone, stay safe. Enjoy the hobby. Try something new. Experiment with different techniques. Try and imitate some of the artists and work that you love. Who knows what you'll learn. Oh yeah, all right, everybody, over and out.
Yep, see you, everybody.